Every Monday, we take a closer look at what your elected officials are up to on both sides of the river. We talked about Iowa in our first half hour, and now we are heading over to Illinois. The House is still out for break, but state senators have been busy looking at and debating several bills. Here to break down some we've been watching is Brendan Moore, State House reporter for Capitol News, Illinois. All right, Brendan, thank you so much for being back with us. I want to start with those super loud commercials. We all know them. What is the Senate trying to do about this?
Yeah, so there's a bill co-sponsored by State Senator Mike Halpin from the Quad Cities area that would basically regulate the volume of commercials on streaming services like Netflix and Hulu. Basically would allow folks to lodge official complaints with the state if those commercials are a little too loud. This would mimic basically FCC, Federal Communications Commission rules that are already in place for television, cable, broadcast, and this would do it at the state level for streaming services, which aren't currently not covered by the feds.
You mentioned how the FCC already has some rules in place for broadcast and linear TV, like what people at home might be watching right now. And this bill seemed to have some pretty good support. How fast did it pass out of committee?
Pretty fast. So the Senate had their committee deadline last week, so they had to get it out of committee, and it'll next go to the floor. And if it passes there, it'll go to the House, and they'll do it all over again. But this is an issue that seems to have pretty broad support. I don't know anybody that likes being bombarded with a loud commercial when they're watching their show, they're streaming their show.
No kidding. I felt like that was me last night watching the Oscars. I was diving for the remote every time the commercial turned on. But I want to turn now to the environment. Illinois lawmakers are scrambling to pass a bill all about wetland protections. I want to get to why they're rushing in just a second. But first of all, what does this bill say?
Yeah, so this bill basically give the state's Department of Natural Resources the authority over wetland permitting on private land before construction can begin.
And why now? Why are lawmakers pushing to get this done in 2026?
So this has been proposed before, and it really hasn't gone anywhere. But this year, there might be a better chance of it actually getting through because there's been some changes at the federal level. The Trump administration, the EPA, has proposed a stricter definition of uh, basically wetlands that would basically exclude seasonal streams, marshes, bogs, swamps from protection under the Clean Water Act. So, under the new provisions, that would open up about 700,000 acres worth of wetlands to not being protected in Illinois if they don't have these regulations. So, again, this is another issue where it's kind of been out there for a few years, but may finally have a little bit of momentum given what's happening at the federal level with some changes in policy.
So the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign did this study, and they said well over 50%, almost pushing 2/3 of Illinois' wetlands under this new Trump administration rule would be allowed to be built on if this law is not passed here in the state. We just talked about bipartisan support for loud commercials. Is there that same bipartisan momentum for this bill?
I think that this one's going to be a more difficult sell. There's been a lot of pushback from the Illinois Farm Bureau, from business interests, and there's even some questions about whether Governor J.B. Pritzker would support this. He's currently trying to push through a proposal to expand housing opportunities in Illinois and to cut red tape, and this would add another layer of regulation that might make it more difficult for people to build. So there are some hurdles that still need to be jumped through for the advocates pushing this. A lot of support among Democrats, especially environmentally conscious Democrats, but I think Republican support is probably going to be few and far between, and even some Democratic support might be tough.
Well, Brennan, before I let you go, the Senate has advanced a bill that would require local city governments to create their own version of the state's pension buyout program. Pensions have been a very hot button topic for many, many years. What's the argument here?
Yeah, so this wouldn't necessarily be a mandate. It basically would say that you have to establish the program, and then you would have the option to offer it, I guess, when and how often. And the idea is that you can offer somebody with a pension. So at the state level, it's often state workers, teachers. At the local level, it'd probably be police officers, firefighters, other city workers, and would say that you would get a lump sum payment now instead of receiving future pension benefits. And so it would cost a bit up front for local governments, but it would save them money down the line because they would not be responsible for pension payments, which, as we know, tier one pensions, which are folks that have pensions that were hired before 2010, have very generous pension benefits, and they've been a kind of a financial burden both at the state level and at local government levels. So the idea is to reduce that burden. The state program has saved the state about $3 billion, so it could potentially be maybe a short-term cost, but would produce some long-term savings.
Well, as we know, the legislative session doesn't go on forever, and we're going to start meeting some funnel deadlines coming up in these next few weeks. So we'll be excited to see which bills advance and which ones will get pushed down the line to next year or beyond. Brendan, as always, thank you so much for your time today.
Always a pleasure, Shelby.
And for you guys at home, we have our political coverage for both states up on our website. You can find the latest underneath the As Seen on TV tab at the top of the homepage.